These are all the 38 best character-defining moments in One Piece. Did you know that I finally found a clue about something you will not believe? Franky's parents. And let's not forget everyone's favorite Nakama, Bon Clay-chan, who made the ultimate sacrifice by staying behind and impelled down, giving up his own freedom so Luffy and the crew could escape. There was also a moment when a character had to make an insanely tough choice, killing his own best friend, and that decision could completely spark a massive transformation in that major character. And what if I told you that before Zoro's legendary nothing happened moment in Thriller Bark, another Straw Hat actually pulled off the same move? I know you wouldn't expect it, but it was Chopper. One of the Straw Hats' so-called weakling trio had a shining moment way back in Skypiea, when Mary was stuck at the sacrificial altar in Upper Yard. Chopper was left to guard the ship all by himself when Shura, one of Enel's priests, launched a surprise attack. Chopper totally flipped out and called for Gonfall right away without even thinking. But after Chopper and Gonfall barely made it out alive and Mary was nearly burned to ashes, Chopper just brushed it off and told Zoro and the crew nothing scary happened. So yeah, Chopper actually had the first nothing happened moment before Zoro pulled it off in Thriller Bark. So Zoro is a copycat. Believe that. But compared to Chopper's shining moment, the other apparently weakling trio member Usopp had an even crazier one. The Straw Hat Sniper really stole the show in Dressrosa when he saved all the slaves trapped under Sugar's broken devil fruit powers. These people were freed from their nightmare of being toys, forced to work 24/7 in the Don Quixote family's underground operations. And after the chaos the Straw Hats caused by taking down Doflamingo and his crew, Usopp finally got the recognition he deserved with a massive bounty upgrade. This time, legit, under his own name, and with the epic title of God. Before that, Usopp had some big moments that showed off his skills, like when he shot the world government flag at Enies Lobby. But back then he went by the name, or should I say, a completely different person, Sogeking. So for me, the real highlight was when he stood out as Usopp himself. Now I think that everyone knows the next arc in Elbaf will most likely be Usopp's limelight. There's a theory about what could be in store for him as the final saga of the series continues to unfold. According to the theory, Usopp could unlock an insane level of observation haki, possibly even stronger than Shanks' killer of observation haki. Usopp might learn to manipulate the future sight of his targets, meaning he could create false futures in their minds. With all the lies and tricks Usopp can pull off, with his crazy imagination, he might actually channel that into his observation haki. Finally, a place where he can use it. Aside from that, he might even learn to manipulate the presence detection of his targets. Like when he tried to fool Luffy back in Syrup Village by claiming he had an army of 80 million men under his command. It was a lame trick back then, but you get my point. Usopp also had a major moment when he clashed with his own captain, Luffy, as the Straw Hats faced the gut-wrenching decision to say goodbye to their ship, Mary, after she couldn't sail any longer. It was so hard for Usopp that after losing his duel with Luffy, he left the crew. But he left the crew because to him, it felt like he was the only one who stayed loyal to Mary until the very end. As a crew, the Straw Hats also had some defining moments that strengthened their bonds through all the ups and downs. Like when they lost their most trusted Nakama, Vagoing Mari. Before that at Enies Lobby. I know I wasn't the only one totally hyped when they stood up to CP9 and straight up set the world government's flag on fire. And that wasn't even my favorite moment. Back in Kokiasi Village, the Straw Hat crew made an iconic entrance to Arlong Park to avenge Nami and her village. It was actually the first time the Straw Hats meant serious business. And man, it was hands down one of their most badass entrances ever. Speaking of grand entrances, the Straw Hats did it again and again, like when they easily wrecked the first line of defense at the Torii Gate during the raid of Onigashima. And when the crew huddled up and called on the Samurai Alliance to back them against the Beast Pirates. Now I know our boy Captain Luffy has had a lot of crazy moments that either broke the internet or gave you and me insane goosebumps. For example, when Nami was being stubborn and didn't want any help from Luffy and the crew. But can you blame her? Her life went to hell after Arlong killed Bellemere right in front of her. After working for the same guy, or rather, Fishman, who killed her adopted mom, Nami got totally played by Arlong. She felt so helpless that she started stabbing the Arlong Pirate's tattoo on her shoulder over and over. Lesson learned, I guess. Luffy switched to serious mode and handed his straw hat to Nami. a symbol that real Nakamas always have each other's backs. But that wasn't the only defining moment for Luffy and Nami's friendship. When Nami got sick after the Straw Hats entered the Grand Line, Luffy climbed a snowy mountain on Drum Island to find a doctor, carrying both Sanji and Nami on his back. Luffy and Sanji also had some serious "bro, I can't do this without you" moments back in Whole Cake Island. When the Sanji retrieval team snuck into Big Mom's territory to bring back their cook, Luffy went all out for him. Not only did Luffy say he couldn't reach his dream of becoming Pirate King without Sanji, but he even refused to eat anything unless it was Sanji's cooking. That just shows how much Luffy really values his friends and crew. Aside from his crew, Luffy also values the adventure itself, more than just becoming the Pirate King right away. Back in Sabaody, when the Straw Hats met Rayleigh, the crew had a chance to learn the secrets of the final island, Raftel, and even the Void Century. But our captain said he'd rather end his adventure than learn about the One Piece too soon. This was a huge deal for the government, which is why they had to put a bounty on Robin's head in the first place. She has the ability to unlock the mysteries of the Void Century by reading the poneglyphs. But of course, the Straw Hats weren't about to let Robin fall into the hands of the world government. Luffy did everything he could. He even unlocked Gear 2 and literally stormed through Aqua Laguna on the world government in Enies Lobby. Luffy even punched a celestial dragon in Sabaody, which is probably one of the most satisfying moments in all of One Piece. It seemed like there was no stopping Luffy and his crew as they slowly took over the pirate stage of this generation. But everything changed when they faced the might of the Pacifista and got a first-hand experience of Navy Admiral Kizaru's power. After suffering a huge loss when the Straw Hats were dispersed, the biggest obstacle that stopped Luffy in his tracks to becoming the Pirate King, and than him and his crew when he fought for Ace's freedom during the Marineford War. The battle was like it was Luffy, the rookie pirate, just starting to make a name for himself. Sure, Luffy had won plenty of hardcore both the Marines and pirates was undeniable. Despite everything Luffy had done since Impel Down, it all felt pointless, I think, at that point when he couldn't save his brother. Because of that, Luffy trained like an animal for 2 years to reach a level where he could stand among the strongest pirates. I think he was literally beside animals too. And now, finally, he's considered a formidable emperor of that we can do it too. Zoro's big moment came early when he got completely smoked by Mihawk back at Baratie. Mihawk fighting with just a tiny necklace knife against Zoro's full strength 3-sword style. And with Zoro already using Wado Ichimonji, one of the 21 great swords, was just a complete diss. Zoro cried and made a vow that he wouldn't lose again until he became the world's greatest swordsman. And you know, it's super rare to see this guy cry. In 1,000 chapters, Zoro has only shed tears once. Okay, that's a lie. It was 4 times. Only 4, not 10, only 4. The first was when his completely wrecked him, and you won't believe the other time Zoro actually cried. The third was when the Straw Hats thought they were goners right after entering the Grand Line, because of course their dumbass captain punched the massive island whale Laboon. And the last one? This one was the roughest. It was so damn traumatic that Zoro forced it out of his memory when he saw Granny and swore the first mermaid he ever saw was Kami. But above all these emotional moments, Zoro's defining pain bubble all on his own, never telling the crew what happened, and from where we got the iconic. Once the Straw Hats came through and took down the Arlong pirates, joining Luffy's crew was a no-brainer for her. When Nami met her true highlight of loyalty was when she stood her ground against Ulti. I mean, she's part of the weakling trio with Usopp and Chopper, but even when she was staring death in the face, Nami stayed true to Luffy and his dream of becoming the Pirate King. Now, even with everything known about her adopted family and role in the Frankie, yes, I finally found a clue about his parents that you might have missed, and I'm going to talk about it shortly. If Nami's arguably the most loyal among the crew, this next one has some questionable loyalty. Sanji. Because he almost left the crew not once but twice. You probably remember when he sacrificed the Straw Hats. In Skypiea, when he sacrificed himself to save Usopp and Nami from Enel's devastating attack. Sanji ended up collapsing from Enel's insane lightning strike, but the guy still managed to flex, saying he was just looking for a light. And let's be real, you know a Sanji moment's coming when he pulls out a cigarette and lights it up, his prisoner. Isn't it just a matter of time before she plays a game-changing role? Especially since she might finally unlock or try to kill Luffy and Dressrosa. If I'm being frank, I don't think Sabo's real moment has come yet. I know he's the first outsider to lay eyes on Imu and live to tell the tale. That's why I believe Sabo is going to play in this and the world government's oppression. Monkey D. Dragon started a movement to stand up for the people and in Locktown and prevented his son's capture when he stopped Smoker from taking Luffy. Dragon wasn't the only one who eventually got fed up with the Marines, but unlike Dragon, this next guy literally switched sides and became a pirate. Well, I guess after Aokiji lost to his navy rival Akainu in their epic showdown for Fleet Admiral, Aokiji wasn't about to take orders from the guy who just trashed him. That's why he went rogue and ended up joining the Blackbeard pirates. Aokiji's principles as a pirate were really put to the test when he had to fight his sacrifice and his pretending by acting as Blackbeard's pawn while secretly being a member of SWORD. Think about it. X-Drake did the same when he infiltrated the Beast Pirates and even became one of the Tobi Roppo. So it is totally realistic and possible that Aokiji joined the Blackbeard Pirates to keep another emperor in check, if that doesn't convince you. How about the idea of Aokiji being a double agent for the Revolutionary Army? There's even a theory. Remember when Kuzan said you didn't have to be in the Navy to make things happen in the world? That statement sounded like it battered his former Marine comrade Saul, as in chapter 1066, Vegapunk Shaka revealed that Saul is actually alive and in Elbaf. Plus, Aokiji even let Robin escape the brutal extermination in Ohara, overthrow the world government. Aokiji might have just stayed in the Navy to keep an eye on the Marines, and it's possible he was protected. You think Aokiji could really be an icy cold revolutionary, working in the shadows for Dragon? Think about it. Just like Dragon, Kuzan was furious over what happened at Ohara, especially when Akainu ordered their total extermination. And Aokiji's beef with Akainu didn't stop there. It escalated into a death match that left Punk Hazard permanent, the event that changed everything for Akainu, making him the new Fleet Admiral. I mean, let's be honest, he's powerful, but who doesn't hate this guy, man? Even before he became the Navy's shock collar, he was responsible for came close to killing Kobe, his fellow Marine. He's probably the only character who gets worse every time he has a divine, even stronger, despite losing key players like Aokiji and Sengoku stepping down to become a lower-ranking Inspector General after Akainu replaced him. Additionally, the balance of the three powers, the Navy, the Emperors, and the Warlords, almost fell apart after the 7 Warlord system was abolished during the Reverie. I think the only good thing about Akainu is that he's not exactly vibing with the world government and the Gorosei, which plays to our advantage. So yeah, he's not exactly a world government lapdog. That's why Akainu's always clashing with the Gorosei's puppets. Look in favor of the Revolutionary Army, or even the pirates if they decide to take advantage of this rift between the Navy and the world government. Even though there are plenty of rotten and crappy Marines, there are some who are still straight up dedicated to Sir and real. And in that same war, Kobe unlocked a crazy new power, learning observation hockey and sensing emotions. The chaos and losses pushed him to the edge, and he boldly stood up to Akainu, putting his life on the line as he begged for the war to end. The moment was so huge. Even Shanks gave him a spot, man. Having to choose between his family and his duty as a Marine when Ace was set to be executed. Garp didn't he showed up to save his sworn brother. In the end, Garp's grandpa instincts kicked in when he was supposed to stop Luffy, accepting the pain of the person who actually raised his grandkids. Honestly, during the war, I didn't fully believe Garp. Wreck Hachinosu with his insane galaxy impact. When Sword came to save Kobe, oh, I can't help but wonder, man. Whew, Garp in his prime? What if Garp had totally flipped out at Marineford and backed up his family? What the hell would have happened? Like, who would have died on the Marine side? But now that Garp's been caught and left in Blackbeard's territory, what do you think is going to happen next for the Marine hero? Blackbeard, I'm not so sure if the Gorosei though would give in to any demands from Blackbeard. Even if he uses Garp as leverage, especially since he's trying to join the hunt if Garp's life is on the line, right? Blackbeard became a real powerhouse after snatching Whitebeard's Gura Gura no Mi, turning him into that classic final boss type. At this point, he's probably the last guy anyone wants getting his end, since he's the only one known to possess 2 insanely strong devil fruits. And in case you forget, Yami Yami no Mi has no end or weakness at all. Like, what is it saying? Like how Blackbeard took down a top-tier pirate with an OP devil fruit, Trafalgar Law, or should I say Trafalgar D. Water Law, because that was the moment it was Go, Big Mom, and Kaido. Law had been making moves like a true member of the D clan, just with a weak crew backing him up. The Heart Pirates' defeat against Blackbeard was definitely unavoidable. If Blackbeard had gotten his hands on the Ope Ope no Mi though, the series might have, well, just ended right there because I wouldn't have watched it. But kudos to Beppo, he saved the day by transforming into a Sulong form and escaping with his captain. Even though Law managed to escape, Blackbeard walked away with the ultimate beating of his life. With Shanks. Like, the guy really didn't learn his lesson, huh? I mean, at first he seemed like the frontrunner of the Worst Generation, gaining the highest bounty even above Luffy, but turns out he was a bust. Kind of like the hell no, it's gonna be epic. Like when he surprisingly arrived at Marineford and instantly stopped the war. He casually flexed right there. But that wasn't the first time Shanks' crew had you and me hyped. Because did you know they had the first blow, to be exact? He straight up shot a bandit point blank while Shanks calmly reminded everyone they were pirates and the rules don't apply to them. And who said One Piece is for kids? But technically the first death we saw was none other than Shanks' captain and the Pirate King himself, Gold D. Roger. His death was so influential that it hooked people like you and me on the series. I mean, he's the reason everyone set sail in search of his treasure. Simply put, Roger's execution kicked off a whole new age, the Great Pirate Era. But before that, arguably the biggest moment on the island, Raftel. That's when Roger earned the title of Pirate King, and the world learned of his fame, treasure, and unmatched power. Vegapunk even announced in his worldwide broadcast that the only ones who unlocked the mysteries of the Void Century were the Roger Pirates. And that was actually one of Dr. Vegapunk's defining moments, his hope to the Ohara scholars, that he made sure their life's work wouldn't be forgotten. And even though keeping their research alive could told the world that the fate of everything depends on who gets their hands on the One Piece. And that wasn't the only truth he revealed. In case you forgot, Bonnie showed up on the government island ready to take Vegapunk's head. You see, Bonnie knew that Dr. Vegapunk was the one who turned her adoptive dad, Kuma, into a cyborg. And to make it worse, he made a whole on her dad. Turns out Kuma did it willingly, just to make sure Bonnie could be cured from the sapphire scale disease. So after Bonnie made peace with Vegapunk, they had a moment where he told her he made her the top of So I guess the best daddy award. That just shows how much Kuma really loved Bonnie and her mom, Guinea. Kuma gave up his humanity race like the Buccaneers get wiped out in the first place. In chapter 1095, Saturn said, the Buccaneers committed a grave crime, which led to their elimination. So what was this crime? Could it be tied to the fact that the Buccaneers who got double whammied was definitely Admiral Kizaru? Why? Because Kizaru killed his best friend, Yap and uncle. Man, no wonder Kizaru actually cried. It was the first time we've ever seen him show that kind of emotion. And on a work week, no? I know Akainu apologized after, but am I the only one who felt that wasn't really sincere? So this massive loss for Kizaru could potentially spark a huge chance in his character, no? Who knows, he might because of his slow, laid-back vibe, but because he's ridiculously strong despite his slow-mo style. Remember this? They really couldn't do a thing against him. Luckily, Rayleigh swooped in with his super sandals. I mean, stopping Kizaru's onslaught. The clash between these top-tier fighters was a reality check for the Straw Hats. A slap of insane powers, like when he saved Hancock and the entire Amazon Lily from Blackbeard. His burst of conquerors beast pirates, King and Queen. But it hit hard, man, when Marco said he had to say goodbye once again after he's shown what true loyalty to a friend looks like, saving Luffy and the Straw Hats on multiple occasions, and their wildest parts would go to any length to save a friend. And when Bon Clay had the chance to join the mass breakout from Impel Down, he stayed behind to make sure his friends made it out of the inescapable prison. As Luffy escaped the underwater prison, like him had some respectable moments. You know, yeah, sometimes villains do things that make us pause. For the ex-warlord who once terrorized Alabasta, his surprising moment came when he saved Ace from execution. You might have missed it, but when Luffy and even Whitebeard couldn't stop the execution, Crocodile stepped in and handled it. Sure, Ace died later, but you gotta give the guy credit. The whole war, Crocodile was out to kill Whitebeard, and then suddenly he's saving Ace? Crocodile even said that they shouldn't let the Marines get their way. And for a guy like him to say that, I rate it. Now, if you remember, Crocodile's whole plan in Alabasta was spoiled after his former right hand, Nico Robin, fed him false info about the Poneglyph. That was a major character moment for Robin. She didn't want the ancient weapon to fall into the hands of an ex-warlord. All she ever wanted to do was continue the work of the Ohara scholars. But more than that, Robin values her friends so much that she's her call. This was a huge shift for Robin, because after running for 20 years, she finally chose to protect the people who bottom of her heart that she wanted to sail the seas with these awesome comrades. Robin finally understood what Frankie had told her, that existing is not a crime. Those are some big words coming from this self-proclaimed person. Recent update about a certain character might just connect to Frankie's parents. And that character is none other than the lead performer of the Beast Pirates, Queen. Turns out, Queen's past lines up exactly with Frankie's. Queen abandoned his child, the same age as Frankie was when his parents left him. But on the real, seriously, what's with all these dads in One Piece ditching their kids? Well, if you compare Frankie and Queen's personalities, they totally could be father and son, right? I mean, both of them are wild and loud, plus they are both cyborgs. Even though Frankie's usually a laid-back kind of guy, he's still insanely reliable when it counts. And to be real, his most badass moment had to be when he fearlessly stood up to Big Mom, telling no. But actually, those are the exact same words Jinbei told Big Mom when he left her crew. Back in chapter 863 safe, but if he chose to leave, she'd take a chunk of his lifespan. Thing is, that power only works on people who are terrified of her. That might have been a badass move, but it wasn't Jinbei's best moment. His biggest moment was when he, without any hesitation, offered his blood for transfusion to Luffy, an act that is considered illegal in Ryukyu Kingdom where Jinbei came from. In that moment, Luffy and Jinbei showed that the long-standing rift and separation between the human and the fishman race would one day disappear. That wasn't the first time that Jinbei showed respect to a human. Before that, he was a huge supporter of Whitebeard, and the Ryukyu Kingdom was even under the former Emperor's protection until Whitebeard really was. His death, broadcasted worldwide, left a huge impact, especially when his dying words confirmed that the One Piece is real. Did it give you the chills? He could have had the power and resources to search for Roger's treasure, but as you know, Whitebeard's real treasure was his family. Whitebeard's rival for the title of the strongest probably had the wildest introduction ever. Kaido, aka the strongest creature in the world. I mean, the dude was a freak. His hobby was literally jumping from a sky island and skyrocketing headfirst down to kill himself, and all he would get is a headache. Kaido was so unstoppable that he managed to conquer Wano, a closed off it. This samurai was so powerful that Kaido respected him and ranked him among the few people who could stand up to him. Oden may have been ultimately defeated, but he endured all the pain and shame for the sake of saving his country. Honestly, I think he had a real shot at taking down Kaido if it weren't for Orochi and Kaido's dirty tricks that targeted Oden's. So his son, Kozuki Momonosuke, despite being just an 8-year-old kid, had to shoulder the burden of saving his country. By Wano, formed alliances with Luffy and Law, and even fought in the battle himself. And as the fight against Kaido and his elephant, I know that Momo will play an even bigger role, especially with Pluton, one of the ancient weapons that's under his roof. If Momo had the rare ability to hear the voice of all things, this high-ranking marine, well, he just had hearing abilities. Admiral Fujitora. You see, the guy literally blinded himself because he was so fed up with all the evil he had witnessed in the world. But when he met Luffy, Fujitora was moved by how Luffy restored Dressrosa, something the Navy and the world government had ignored for so long, even though they knew about all the shady business Doflamingo was doing right under their noses. That is why in that moment, Fujitora kinda regretted being blind, because after everything Luffy did for Dressrosa, he actually wanted to see our boy. Another one who believed in Luffy and made the ultimate sacrifice was Pedro. Back in Whole Cake Island, Pedro gave up his life. It's not just about Pedro. Brook also pulled off something insane when he took on Big Mom all by himself. Honestly, it's one of the most underrated and least talked about fights. My guy soloed Big Mom. Like, it was actually a pretty solid fight since Soul King Brook was like the perfect counter to Big Mom's powers, you know? Yeah, Brook still got defeated, but the real MVP move was that he managed to escape with a copy of the Emperor's Road Poneglyph. Now, speaking of team up, I mean, both Luffy and Katakuri have beef with Blackbeard too. Luffy still hasn't avenged Ace, and Katakuri is definitely going to be going after Blackbeard to save Pudding. Can you imagine this game-changing team